In today's age, people often have mixed feelings when it comes to law enforcement. Some people believe police officers are stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to proper protocol, while others believe power-hungry officers utilize their position to promote racist behavior. But no matter where you fall on the spectrum, chances are you're grateful to have officers around when it comes to high-speed chases. Speed chases are an almost daily occurrence, but there are some that are far more memorable and crazy than others. Here are 10 of those chases. High-speed chases are nothing new for Los Angeles police, but every once in a while there's a chase that goes down in California history. This chase took place in September 2016 near downtown LA. Little is known about the perpetrator, but chances are the shiny black SUV he's driving has been stolen. At this point, many officers are in pursuit of the vehicle and have successfully blocked several points of an intersection. It is very likely that the driver was intoxicated or somehow inebriated during the time of the chase because he quickly panics while turning left through an intersection. He immediately slams the SUV into a metal pole and drags it a few feet. The SUV begins to emit smoke, and a small fire can be seen emanating from under the hood of the car. The driver attempts to back up, but cannot dislodge the vehicle from the street sign. Seconds later, the driver flees the vehicle, frantically running across the street. It is unclear whether the police threatened to shoot him, or if the man's intoxication causes him to fall, but nonetheless he flails to the ground and is quickly apprehended. Earlier this month, a South California police officer was watching traffic in Kershaw County when he witnessed a small black car careen past him at 105 miles per hour. The officer proceeded to turn on his lights and take after the vehicle. Expecting the car to pull over, the officer was surprised when the black car sped up, clearly attempting to leave the police car in the dust. The driver, 18-year-old Malik Shoulders, not only did not have a license, but had marijuana in the car with him. Afraid of the repercussions, Shoulders thought it was best to flee. The officer radioed the chase in and remains calm throughout the duration of the chase. He watches as Shoulders, then unknown, continues to fly down the road. After several minutes, Shoulders swerves off the road to avoid hitting a truck and rolls the car at least 3 times. Shoulders' car lands upright, and he takes off again for several minutes. Finally, his car is too battered to continue much longer, and he comes to a stop near a strip mall. The officer is quick to move and grapples Shoulders to the ground. The 18-year-old is currently waiting a bond hearing. Christmas 2013 was quickly approaching, and for many of FedEx and UPS drivers, that means a lot of overtime. One FedEx driver was making his rounds in Kansas City and was leaving a package on a front porch, only to turn around and find that a man had gotten into his delivery truck and took off down the street. The employee immediately contacted the police, but it was a local news station that first located the stolen truck from their news chopper overhead. While the police scramble to catch up, the news team continues to follow the stolen truck from the air. As the man in the stolen truck ventures out of the neighborhood and onto a more populated street, the news team make commentary. Amusingly enough, the criminal seems inclined to obey traffic laws. He follows the established speed limit and even uses turn signals to change lanes. After several minutes, the police officers have caught up with him and surround the vehicle as the truck comes to a stop at a traffic light. One officer gets close enough to open the driver's side door, but the criminal steps on the gas and takes off again. Picking up substantial speed, the driver leads police through a myriad of subdivision streets, desperate to evade them. A couple officers manage to lay down a spike strip ahead of him, and the right rear tire is punctured. As the man continues to drive the truck, the tire flattens and falls off the wheel entirely. Sparks emit from the back of the truck, and the man is forced to come to a halt soon after the truck itself catches fire. Last year, a high-speed chase in Redford, Michigan, concluded with fairly comical results. The chase began on Highway I-696 near Farmington Hills, when a young man and his friend fled from Michigan State Police. Both state and local police were quickly informed and followed the red SUV in a hot pursuit. Thinking it would be easier to lose the police by getting off the highway, the driver and his accomplice exit the highway in the Redford area. They continue to flee for several minutes until they accidentally collide with a Coca-Cola delivery truck. Both men leapt out of the vehicle and began to run on foot. The accomplice is quickly apprehended off camera, but the driver manages to run off the road and through a residential neighborhood. Unfortunately for him, a police chopper has been waiting from the air the entire time. They easily follow his every move as he leaps over fences and weaves his way through several backyards. After a few minutes, the criminal makes an ingenious decision to hide under a trampoline. The chopper quickly radios to officers on foot, and the young man is quickly captured. Several commentators have joked that clearly the criminal was more of a Pepsi fan. In early December of last year, a Norwood, Ohio police officer noticed a man was driving somewhat recklessly as he approached a traffic light around 2:30 a.m. Noting that the driver seemed to hug the traffic line and was slow to react to the red light, the officer pulled out after him, almost certain that the driver was intoxicated. The driver, a 36-year-old man named Ryan Brown, was not only drunk, but had 163 grams of marijuana in the car with him. Scared of police charges, Brown decided to flee, driving off around 80 miles per hour. The officer quickly followed. After a few minutes, Brown runs into an SUV parked off to the side of the road. Believing the chase is over, the officer gets out of his vehicle and approaches Brown, but Brown surprises the police by quickly recovering and driving across the lawn in order to escape. Brown quickly picks up speed, that is, until he rams his vehicle straight into a pole a few miles further down the road. The impact renders him unconscious. Once the officer notices that Brown is unconscious, he immediately fishes the criminal out of the vehicle and radios for an ambulance. In March of 2015, a man named Hector Puga got into an altercation with his wife. After showing up unannounced at her house, Puga declared that he would be taking his stepdaughter with him. Angry and afraid, the wife contacted the police. Already wanted for a previous altercation with his wife, Puga took off from her house, which resulted in an adrenaline-pumping chase through Los Angeles. Knowing Puga was armed and dangerous, the police followed at a cautious distance. After several minutes, Puga realizes that a chopper is overhead, and being caught is inevitable. Then he proceeds to stop in the middle of the street, get out of his SUV, and begins to fire his handgun at the police, yelling at them that he would not be going back to jail. Puga waves his gun around as he walks towards them, but is then shot on the right-hand side of his body. Miraculously, Puga manages not only to dive behind his vehicle, but to walk up to a nearby house where he collapses on the front porch. As blood oozes from his wound, the police surround the house and are stunned to see that not only is Puga conscious, but he is able to sit upright, watching them from the porch. The bloody scene lasts over an hour, until Puga, knowing he could die from blood loss, decides to surrender. Puga was then taken to a hospital and was treated for the gunshot wound. Earlier this month, police officers in Polk City, Iowa, were informed that 16-year-old Bobby McNeil had taken off in a stolen vehicle. McNeil, who already had 3 felonies and 8 misdemeanor arrests at the time, was already well known by Polk City police. As McNeil continued to flee, more and more officers got involved. Spotting the stolen vehicle in a parking lot, one officer immediately follows. Afraid and angry, McNeil takes off again and flies down the road at an alarming speed. The officer is quick in pursuit and watches in horror as McNeil careens off the road to avoid a roundabout. The vehicle goes airborne and collides into a tree. As the car lands, a fire begins under the hood. The officer pulls over and immediately grabs McNeil, dragging him away from the fire. As the officer pins him to the ground, McNeil fails to mention that a second person, a 15-year-old girl named Malaya Cooper, was in the car. The officer had not seen her upon his approach, as she had been flung into the back seat upon impact with the tree. As more officers arrive at the scene, Malaya is found in the backseat and is quickly pulled out and taken to the nearest hospital. While McNeil survived from his injuries, Malaya sadly passed away. Many people believe she may have been saved had McNeil informed the officer he had not been alone in the vehicle. On September 6, 2016, Avondale, Arizona law enforcement officers were quickly informed that 3 men had robbed a local bank and had fled in a black SUV. As police sirens were heard approaching, 2 of the 3 suspects, Ruben Rodriguez and Sergio Escobedo, fled the vehicle on foot, hoping that by splitting up they would be able to escape. That left 31-year-old Steven Del Rio to continue driving his SUV while a news chopper followed him from above. Armed and dangerous, Arizona police followed at a distance, all the while communicating with the news team in the chopper who followed Del Rio's vehicle. They watched in surprise as Del Rio drives through a residential neighborhood and drops off a package to a waiting woman. Both the news crew and the police suspect that the package contained either cash or numerous weapons. Clearly the obvious drop-off, Del Rio continues to flee in his SUV, leading police on and off the highway until he makes it into Phoenix. As Del Rio continues to flee, he is unaware that his two accomplices were apprehended and had already confessed to the robbery. Believing he is, at last, free from pursuit, Del Rio attempts to turn right at an intersection only to be suddenly boxed in by unmarked police cars. Del Rio quickly opens fire at the officers, but is fatally shot through the windshield seconds later. Later on, Rodriguez admitted that all three men had robbed the bank in an attempt to pay off debt for drugs. In 2016, Seattle police were informed that a young man had stolen a 2002 Honda Accord at gunpoint and had taken off into one of the city's neighborhoods. The police were immediately contacted after the incident and found the stolen vehicle not long after. Knowing he was about to face serious charges, the suspect decided to flee in the stolen vehicle and was pursued by an officer through the neighborhood. The criminal successfully manages to both evade police and avoid other vehicles for several minutes until he attempts to make a turn at a fast speed, colliding with another vehicle. Said vehicle was being driven by a 21-year-old man who, along with his dog who was also in the vehicle, were killed on impact. The suspect was pulled out from the wreckage, but also died on impact from the horrific crash. Earlier this year, a man in Dallas, Texas, successfully managed to rob a bank. After grabbing the cash, the man hopped into his Dodge Challenger and fled the scene, only to be followed by several police officers. Not long after the pursuit begins, a police chopper locates the souped-up vehicle and follows his every move, communicating with the police who followed on the ground. The man in the Challenger weaves in and out of traffic at an alarming speed, entering and exiting highways in an attempt to flee. For several minutes, the criminal manages to successfully weave through traffic without causing any accidents. However, not long after exiting a highway, the man is temporarily distracted and sideswipes a black SUV, eventually colliding with the back of a minivan. A couple, along with a shocked young adult, emerge from the minivan and do something nobody expects. They run up to the Challenger and force the criminal out of the vehicle. Police in the chopper watch in amazement as the couple proceeds to punch the criminal and hold onto his shirt, keeping him from running. The man and woman eventually throw the criminal to the ground and keep him there until police show up a few minutes later. While citizens are never encouraged to get involved in high-speed chases, there's no doubt that the brave couple saved the day by taking action into their own hands. Thanks for watching. Please leave a rating and subscribe to see more videos like this.